From the Center for Music Learning at the University of Texas at Austin, I'm Dr. Micah Killian, here with some thoughts on practice. The goal of practice is not to eradicate errors, but to make better errors. Let me tell you what I mean. Most of practice is directed at change making. Now, not all of practice, right? It's typical for musicians to spend the first portion of a practice session warming up or preparing. And it's also pretty typical for especially advanced musicians to spend some time in their practice session mimicking specifically what they're going to do on stage at a performance or in an audition or something like that. But improving is the goal of much of practice, and any attempt at improvement must account for how past trials have failed. In other words, error is a necessary component of change making. But what exactly is error? As far as the brain is concerned with our behavior, error is the discrepancy between what we intend to do and what we actually do. Any daylight between those two things drives adaptations to make the discrepancy smaller the next time we try a task. This is the primary mechanism that musicians at every skill level use to keep improving. To illustrate this, there's some great data from a study by Dr. Lani at UMKC, where she asked 4 different groups of musicians to practice for a few minutes. She asked professional musicians, graduate students, undergraduate students, and high school musicians. So they practiced for a few minutes, and then directly after those practice sessions, she asked them to listen back to what they had just done, and then they had to press a key whenever they heard a discrepancy between what they intended to play and what they actually played. It turns out that all 4 groups pressed the key at about the same rate, about 5 per minute. This suggests that the experts in the study weren't making fewer errors during practice, but rather they were making more subtle errors. What was perceived as an error for the experts was not the same as what was perceived as an error for the high school students. The journey from novice to expert is not characterized by making fewer errors during practice, but by making more subtle errors that drive more subtle adaptations to behavior over time. Instead of aiming for perfection during your next practice session, try embracing error as the necessary component of learning that it is. Instead of eradicating it, use error to learn, change, get better at making more music the way you think music should sound.